So, it's been a little over 6 months since I quit my job. I decided to just walk away from consistently making over $200,000 a year with a team I genuinely liked. I'm currently in the middle of an attempted career pivot that basically says, nah, I'm good, and walk away from more than a decade in a field with a PhD to go back to college again, and basically pull a Monty Python blowing up my career progression.
And now for something completely different.
I spent the past 2 months trying to figure out this YouTube thing, making videos consistently getting fewer than 200 views, and this has undoubtedly been the most uncertain time of my life, and I absolutely love it. I'm incredibly proud of 2 things. First, I just correctly used the word fewer, so thanks Stannis Baratheon. And second, quitting my job feels like one of the best decisions of my life. Today, I want to share the experience that led to me to leave the world of stable paychecks behind, and my personal lessons so far. If you'd asked me about my job in 2022, I would have said, it's fine. The meme perfectly reflected my experience. I'm reminded of this joke from Mitch Hedberg.
I played in a death metal band. People either loved us or they hated us, or they thought we were okay.
Jobs are the same way. They can be awesome, terrible, or just okay. I was just okay. I was fine. And I've come to realize that fine is a terrible, terrible place. If you hate your job, it's easy. You know what it is. It's a paycheck. You know you need to find something else or just compartmentalize it in your life. If you love your job, that's amazing. Hopefully it provides fulfillment and engagement on multiple levels in addition to being a paycheck. Fine is where things get out of balance. You have good days and bad days, and it gets tough to track which one is leading. But there's the paycheck. More importantly, there's the status quo. You keep doing the same thing because it's routine. Momentum's a powerful force, and not just in physics. It's very easy to just keep putting one foot right after the other in the same direction. You just stick to the default. It doesn't require a decision, even though that in itself is a decision. Quitting is harder because it requires action. If you're disengaged at work, turning things up a notch to try to regain enthusiasm and commitment takes energy. But when your work energy reserves are running low, you need to steal from other areas of your life, and that further degrades your balance. From the outside, I appeared to be in a good spot. I was successful. I had a good career, a very decent salary, a team that I loved, a boss I respected, and I worked for a stable company. My professional life was like walking through a forest. I was trudging ahead one foot after the other. Just like hiking, the more you stare at your shoes and focus on those single steps, the more you lose perspective of the destination. Something needed to happen for me to look up, look around, and reassess my path, and that came in the form of layoffs. I know this is a common story these days, but we got the big corporate restructuring talk about 2 years ago, and that loomed over everyone for a couple months until the day finally arrived. It was my first time going through layoffs. That day was pure chaos, gossip, and just a wealth of emotion. Figuring out how I was affected and figuring out how others that I cared about were impacted. When the dust settled after a very long, unproductive, emotionally draining day, I still had a job and was moving to a new role. However, a number of people that I cared about weren't so lucky. One individual impacted me more than the others. My closest mentor was on the list to lose his job. He was someone that I looked up to for most of my time with the company. The next day, my first priority was to reach out and see how he was. I have no idea if he knows it or not, but if he watches this, I guess he'll find out that was one of the most impactful phone calls of my life. I asked how he was feeling, and what he shared will always stick with me. He wasn't upset. He actually seemed optimistic. What he said was he had one very good career with the company, and now the company was giving him the opportunity to have a second really good career. It's his underlying positive framing that I keep with me that guides my steps forward. That was an absolute spark moment for me, even though it took me a lot of time to realize it. While he was positive, I continued to struggle with the changes from the restructuring. I always think of careers as the game of life, and people follow different approaches to their game. I personally modeled my game after a handful of individuals, including my mentor and a couple others. Most of them were on the list that day. I know there's a ton of factors that go into layoff decisions, but from my perspective, it didn't fill me with optimism to see individuals that I'd emulated shown the door, many after more than 2 decades with the company. So I continued to reflect on his framing. He had one good career so far, and now the company was giving him the chance for a second career. He had no choice. This was the next step of his journey. I had a choice. I could stick to the default and keep taking one step at a time, staring at my feet, or I could do the same thing as my mentor and figure out what I really wanted for the rest of my professional life. I could say that I immediately went to my new boss, gave notice, went on a spirit quest to find myself. That totally didn't happen. My spirit quest is still pending. It actually took about another year for me to resign. Being me, it probably took too much time to plan my next steps. But that spark began a period of significant self-reflection that actually continues today. I realized that I'd been fixated on a career path that was no longer as safe as I imagined, and more importantly, it was no longer me. I did what most people would do and started to apply for jobs. I had a number of interviews, and one particular offer that got right up to the moment of calling to accept, only to decline. Again, just like my current job, it seemed like the ideal offer. It was just a few miles from our house, was leading a big team with a 20% raise. However, I got this tummy feel when I took my wife to see the office just before I was about to accept. I didn't want this job. Why didn't I want this job? During the interviews, I realized I wanted the hiring manager's job, which focused on a completely different business function. Talking to his boss, my questions were all about career development and potential paths out of the job I was being offered. In declining that offer, I finally realized it wasn't just that job that I didn't want. That job was the same as my current job. That meant my current job also wasn't what I wanted. My job no longer represented who I was or who I wanted to be, but who did I want to be? I honestly had no freaking clue. It was just that resume me wasn't actual me anymore. So what do I do with that revelation? This triggered a more active effort to redefine myself. I attempted to change functions within my current company and decided to pursue my MBA. Going back to school was something I could fully control and feel like I was making progress towards professional reinvention. You know, in the Barbie movie, Ken is Beach Ken. He's good at beach.
My job, it's just beach.
Well, I'm School Jarrett. I'm good at school. It felt like a safe but very expensive way to regain confidence and clarity about myself. As the months went by, I realized I remained on a slow and seemingly unproductive career path. Within my current company, my steps failed to correct my trajectory, and I still didn't know where I was going. I needed to redefine myself, but was weighed down by the baggage of past decisions and the time that I spent getting to where I was. I felt like the movers from the movie Funny Farm.
If I was going to
change careers,
I sure as hell wouldn't start from here.
I suffered from this mental anguish of sunk costs. I spent too much time reflective negatively on past opportunities I'd ignored and a decade of work that led to what felt like an unsatisfying conclusion. I didn't know where I was headed, but if I was going there, I sure wouldn't start from here. At work, I was still just fine. Like the meme, the fire just keeps growing. Worse yet, I needed to redirect energy from other areas of my life to remain fine at work. One such area was my health. I've always struggled with my weight and fitness, having good periods and bad periods. Back in 2020, I got really into rowing and I lost quite a bit of weight. However, in the chaos and fineness of my career, I gained it all back and more to reach the heaviest and least healthy that I've ever been. When I neared the weight that was claimed by our former president, I knew I couldn't keep going that way and I needed to take action. I needed to stop redirecting energy from that area of my life to remain fine in my job. Around that time, I had enough of a realization that I wanted to pursue consulting. That gave me some real direction to get out of the fine forest, or at least a trajectory with a purpose that I was genuinely excited about. It amazed me the change in my energy reserves when I uncovered something that I was eager to take on and a new challenge that I connected with personal meaning. I realized that I could continue to redistribute energy from other areas of my life and stay fine at work by getting my MBA while attempting a significant career pivot. While I could do it, that certainly would be tougher, longer, and from my overall well-being perspective, pretty freaking painful. Thankfully, after many conversations with my wife about our finances and life, I made the decision to quit, focus on myself, school, and my transformation. It was almost exactly a year after the call with my mentor. Throughout all of this, I refused to sacrifice one aspect of my job, and that's my team. As their boss, my responsibility was to them, and I cherished the role that I played to help them understand themselves and grow their careers. Even on the day that I gave notice, which coincided with my annual review, how my team thought about me was the most important thing. I needed to know if I had actually been successful in hiding my personal struggles. Within my job, that was the area that I'd redirected as much energy as I could. My manager shared that my team really appreciated me and gave very positive feedback, particularly on my commitment to helping them grow and succeed. Despite almost 14 years with the company and quitting without somewhere specific to go, that was the most emotional part of the resignation discussion for me. Given my challenges from the previous year, that's always going to be one of my proudest accomplishments. And I realized in that the conversations with my team about self-awareness and discovery were something that I needed to apply to my own life. I should have been asking myself the same questions and taking time to reflect on who I'd become. In my fine existence, the person that I'd neglected most was me. While I did my best not to burn any bridges, I needed to view leaving just like my mentor did. I had one really good career so far, and now I was giving myself the opportunity to have a second good career that better reflected who I am today. Since resigning, I've had a lot more time to reflect. I've honestly kept myself busier than before I quit. Obviously, a lot of that is the commitments involved in working on my MBA, but my energy and enthusiasm have been on a different level. I've been waking up earlier. I spend at least an hour a day on my rowing machine, watching videos, listening to books and podcasts that help establish my personal direction. I'm genuinely healthier and more excited to take steps to discover who I really am. I haven't yet managed my intended career pivot, and I have a greater level of uncertainty than nearly any point in my life. Despite all that, I feel like I'm living with a greater purpose, and my actions move me in the direction of who I want to become. In leaving my fine existence, I've switched my me. I'm now disaster girl. I'm able to look back on the house of my professional life with greater clarity and see the past raging inferno. I better understand the situation that I was in, and I'm genuinely happier to be outside. As I wrap this up, I need to share that this is the 4th time I've recorded this video. Not the 4th time today, the 4th different time in the past 2 months. This was one of the first videos that I wanted to make, but I've continued to struggle with how to share my experience in a positive, hopefully semi-humorous, and above all, genuine way. I remain incredibly uncertain, and I don't know what comes next. Maybe it's getting an offer in consulting. Maybe I have hallucinations that one of these videos gets enough interest that this creative outlet that I'm absolutely loving becomes a viable path forward. I'm optimistic that creating this content will help me become a better storyteller and create future opportunities while I'm using this unique time in a productive way to hopefully help others. Overall though, I'm more excited to wake up each morning than I was for years in my actual job. That, more than anything, reinforces that I made the right call just to walk away and figure things out. No regrets, no doubts, plenty of uncertainty, but I'm loving the journey to figure out what comes next. And I guess that's the point of all this anyway. I really appreciate getting to share my personal therapy session with you publicly. I'd love to hear what you took away from my experiences and how it relates to what you're going through. My goal is that this is the first video in a series diving into things that I've learned, helping others answer questions like, should I leave my job? Should I go back to school? And why I think every commencement speech about working hard and following your dreams is full of crap. If that's something that interests you, hit subscribe and let me know in the comments one big career question that you'd love to hear me rant about. Thanks so much for joining me for this. I genuinely appreciate it. Let's talk again soon.